Rome had over 70 emperors. Most of them died violently, stabbed, strangled, poisoned, burned alive. Being emperor of Rome was the most dangerous job in the ancient world. This is exactly how each of them died. March 15th, 44 BC. Julius Caesar, 55 years old, dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. He had spent years conquering Gaul, destroying rivals, building power so absolute that 60 senators had quietly decided he needed to die. They called themselves the Liberators. As Caesar entered the portico, a senator named Tullius Cimber approached with a petition. Caesar waved him off. Cimber grabbed his toga and pulled it from his shoulders. That was the signal. Casca struck first, a blade to the neck. Caesar grabbed his arm, fought back with his stylus, a writing instrument, the only weapon he had. It wasn't enough. The senators closed in. 23 stab wounds. He stumbled, bleeding, trying to escape, when he saw Marcus Brutus among the attackers, a man he had pardoned, promoted, trusted. Caesar looked at him and said, "Et tu, brute." He collapsed at the base of Pompey's statue. As he died, he pulled his toga over his face. The autopsy, one of history's first documented, found that of the 23 wounds, only one was fatal, the second stab to the chest. The other 22 were superficial. He was butchered by 60 men, but killed by a single thrust. January 24th, 41 AD, Emperor Caligula, 28 years old, self-declared living god. His nickname meant Little Boots. His reign had started with promise and ended in cruelty. Among his many enemies was a Praetorian officer named Cassius Dio, a man Caligula mocked constantly for having a high-pitched voice. The emperor called him Venus, called him feminine names, humiliated him in front of other soldiers. Dio had been planning his response for a long time. Around noon, Caligula left the games for a bath. The route took him through a narrow underground tunnel beneath the theater. Dio and his conspirators were waiting. As Caligula entered the tunnel, Dio stepped forward and slashed at his jaw and neck. Caligula fell, crying out, "I am still alive." So they stabbed him approximately 30 more times, chest, abdomen, groin. The attack was personal. But they weren't finished. The Praetorian Guard found Caligula's wife and their infant daughter. Both were killed immediately. The man who declared himself a god died in a dark tunnel, begging for his life, killed by the men he spent years humiliating. October 13th, 54 AD, Emperor Claudius, 63 years old, attending a feast at his palace. He had ruled for 13 years, an unlikely emperor, a man the imperial family had kept hidden due to physical disabilities and a stammer. Yet he conquered Britain, reformed Rome's bureaucracy, and was arguably one of its most effective rulers. His fourth wife, Agrippina the Younger, had other priorities. She wanted her son, Nero, on the throne. Claudius had a biological son who stood in the way. She needed Claudius dead before he could update his will. So she hired a professional poisoner. They chose his favorite dish, mushrooms. Claudius ate them, felt ill, started vomiting. The poison was working, just not fast enough. So they went further. His personal physician was also part of the plot. Under the pretense of helping the emperor vomit, he inserted a feather down his throat. A feather pre-dipped in a second dose of poison, delivered directly. That finished it. Within hours, Nero was declared emperor. The murder was so obvious that jokes about poisoned mushrooms circulated Rome for years. Nero himself later called mushrooms the food of the gods, because they had made him one. June 9th, 68 AD, Nero, 30 years old, fleeing through the outskirts of Rome on horseback with a handful of servants. 14 years of ruling. He had murdered his own mother, killed 2 wives, been blamed for burning Rome. Now the legions had revolted. The Senate had declared him an enemy of the state. They rode to a villa 4 miles outside Rome. Word came. The Senate had sentenced him to death by beating, stripped naked, head in a wooden fork, beaten to death with rods. Nero was terrified of that particular humiliation. Long pause. He decided to kill himself. He held a dagger. He kept hesitating. He begged his companions to show him how. None of them would. He could hear the horsemen getting closer. Finally, with the help of his secretary, he drove the dagger into his own throat. As he died, Nero reportedly said, "Qualis artex pereo," what an artist dies in me. Even in his final moments, the vanity held. He asked for a mirror, and then fixed his hair. He wanted to look presentable as a corpse. December 31st, 192 AD. Emperor Commodus, 31 years old, preparing for New Year's celebrations. Son of the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius, 12 years on the throne. He had no interest in governing. He preferred fighting in the arena as a gladiator, and had decided he was the reincarnation of Hercules. His mistress Marcia, his chamberlain, and the Praetorian prefect had seen enough. That evening, Marcia served Commodus wine laced with poison. He drank it, then vomited it all back. It was a habit of his. The conspirators panicked. He was alive, and he might figure out what had happened. So they sent for Narcissus, Commodus's personal wrestling trainer. Commodus was in his bath, weakened from the vomiting. Narcissus walked in, wrapped his hands around the emperor's throat, and strangled him to death in the bathtub. The man who believed himself to be Hercules, the strongest man alive, was killed by a wrestler named after a flower. April 8th, 217 AD. Emperor Caracalla, 29 years old, traveling with his army near Carrhae. He had killed his own brother to rule alone, then massacred thousands of his brother's supporters. His reign was violence from start to finish. That day, around midday, Caracalla needed to urinate. Roman armies didn't stop for individual needs, so he dismounted, stepped off the road for privacy, walked a short distance from his guards, 1 bodyguard with him. A soldier named Julius Martialis approached from behind. Martialis had 2 grievances. Caracalla had denied him a promotion and had executed his brother. As Caracalla stood, hands occupied, attention diverted, Martialis drew his sword, and then stabbed in the back, and then struck again. Caracalla is the only Roman emperor known to have died while urinating on the side of the road. History records many undignified exits. This one has a particular quality to it. March 16th, 222 AD. Emperor Elagabalus, 18 years old. He had become emperor at 14. His reign scandalized Rome on a scale that impressed even Romans. He installed a massive black meteorite on the Palatine Hill and forced senators to worship it. He wore makeup and women's clothing. By 222 AD, his own grandmother had turned against him. The Praetorian Guard mutinied. Soldiers stormed the palace. Elagabalus tried to hide. They found him and stabbed him to death. Then it got worse. The guards dragged his body through the streets. Citizens mocked the corpse. They decapitated it, threw the head into the Tiber River. Then they dragged the headless, naked body to the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's main sewer, and threw it in. Emperor Elagabalus ended up in the sewers, discarded like garbage. June 260 AD. Emperor Valerian, 65 years old, agreeing to meet Persian King Shapur to negotiate peace. It was a trap. Persian forces seized him at arrival. Valerian became the first Roman emperor ever captured alive by a foreign enemy. Shapur kept him as furniture. Every time the Persian king mounted his horse, Valerian was forced to kneel,
and let Shapur step on his back to climb into the saddle. The man who once commanded legions lived as a slave for years. When Valerian finally died, Shapur decided the humiliation should be permanent. He had Valerian's corpse flayed, carefully removed, dyed bright red, stuffed with straw, and displayed in a Persian temple for centuries. Valerian's remains became a tourist attraction in enemy territory. August 9th, 378 AD, Emperor Valens, 50 years old, Battle of Adrianople. He had underestimated the Gothic forces, rushed in without waiting for reinforcements. Gothic cavalry surrounded and destroyed the Roman infantry, 2/3 of the Roman force annihilated. One of the worst military defeats in Roman history.